I got out very quickly, that burnout really, really set in. And it was really heartbreaking for me of feeling this for the past 7 years. I had been obsessed with learning about this thing and dreaming about this moment. And then to kind of have the system chew me up and spit me out a little bit was really, really hard.
Today on Business Underdog, you're going to meet an aspiring entrepreneur who kind of left the traditional medical practice to start his own. What I love so much about Logan's story is that it's his passion, it's his why he does what he does that really truly drives his success. We often see people start for money and start for a lot of other reasons, and none of them are bad reasons. But Logan's true commitment to providing better care outside of the traditional healthcare system has been his differentiation and allowed him to actually build a thriving practice in a very short period of time. We're going to learn about overcoming obstacles, learning things you don't know. And the number one thing I think we could all take from this is being authentic and being yourself will ultimately lead to the greatest amount of success. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with Logan. Logan, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
No, well, I really appreciate you taking the time. And we have a mutual friend and kind of recommended you as someone perfect as a true business underdog, I was super psyched to get you on. So thank you again for taking the time. So I'd love to start just really understanding more of your background, because I think your background is a big kind of impetus for what you're really doing. So walk me through kind of where you're from, how you got to where you are, why you chose physical therapy. Then ultimately we'll make that transition into what was that pivot to kind of go off on your own.
Totally. Totally. So I'm originally from the East Coast. I live in Denver, Colorado now. Originally from like the Hartford area in Connecticut, and just kind of, I grew up playing sports, things like that. I was actually a really big like downhill skateboarder in high school.
Interesting.
And that's kind of like how you and I are seeing each other
That's pretty
today.
intense. That's pretty,
Yeah. Yeah. So I was like sponsored in the whole 9 yards, like I
wow.
would go to races and stuff like that. And so my like entrance to physical therapy was kind of like classic, similar to a lot of physical therapists, where I hit a storm drain on a longboard going around 40 miles an hour and
Oh my
broke my
God.
leg. And so went through like surgery, did the whole rehab process. And I was like, like this is pretty cool. Like I could see myself doing this. I was not a big school person in high school. I joke that like in high school, I think I had a 1.9 GPA and I doubled that in my doctoral program.
That's
And so,
amazing.
and so,
And
yeah,
by the
like
way, did you get back on the board after that broken leg, or are you done?
I did for a little while, and then kind of like the fear of mortality hit as I got a little bit older. But so, yeah, so like went through and I started working as an aide at like a rehab clinic. And then a couple years later, I had, and then at that point, I was like, like this is really, really cool. I think I want to go into this. And so, I had applied to like kind of transferred schools, to the University of Hartford in Connecticut, and just kind of kept working as an aide and stuff like that in the clinic. I had some amazing mentors there who like really, really inspired me, which was awesome. And so ended up applying and going to University of Hartford for physical therapy school,
It's
and
awesome.
yeah, like graduated with my doctorate and went back and worked at the same clinic that I had been working at as an aide. We used to joke around that it's like a farm system from aide to clinician. My old boss was really, really good at like just building his people, and like really taking the time to mentor us, and it was the best place I could have started my career. Like he would sit me down and block out my schedule for at least 2 hours every week and go over patient cases, and it truly felt like an orthopedic residency for multiple years. And
It's amazing.
like he was super supportive in like just providing so much continuing education and just like building my skill set and stuff, to the point where when I was ready to leave, and my fiance and I decided like we wanted to move to Denver. We were ready to like leave Connecticut. I remember having this conversation with him 9 months before I left. I gave him 9 months of notice. He and I sat down over dinner, and basically he told me, he's like, well, if you're going to leave, I want you to take all these courses because I want you to be the best possible candidate for when you go out there. And
That's amazing.
if that sort of support and just like, yeah, like support and like belief in me, that you really do not find in the healthcare field. And so
Yeah.
he was definitely someone who like put a lot out for his people, and so I think that that's something that I've carried with me a lot for sure, as well as like a lot of the other more like senior clinicians there too. I remember when I was in grad school, we had a cumulative practical exam for the whole program. And there was a guy who his name's Jason. He would stay every Friday. I worked there part time during school. He would stay every Friday for an hour to an hour and a half late with me. And he had a 5-year-old daughter at home to just like go over cases and stuff like that, like out of the kindness of his heart. And it's
It's
like,
amazing. It's
it's
amazing.
the stuff like that and the mentorship like that that really like has put me to where I am today for
And
sure.
I hear that over and over again about, how and you're young and you're building your career, but I'm 100% confident there'll be a point where you'll be turning that script as well and helping other people coming up. So what was the point you're at kind of a traditional practice, kind of a
Mm,
clinician that really made it, what was the breaking point that you wanted to do something a little bit different than some of the traditional healthcare system offered?
totally. So I was in like a traditional clinic back in Connecticut. Like I said, some of the most fantastic mentors in the world. It was the best place I could have started, but it was with the current rehab setting, it is very dictated by insurance and just like insurance reimbursement and stuff like that. And since I think like 1990 or something like that, the rate that Medicare reimburses for physical therapy has decreased by 10%. And like obviously cost of living has increased by you know how much over the
A
last
lot more than that, right?
25. Yes. And so like that's why in a lot of these traditional clinical settings you see like you walk in and usually you're being treated by the therapist and he usually has 3 to 4 other patients at the same time. And so like there'd be times where I would look up and I would look around the room and say, I have 5 people here right now. This is insane. Um, and that's just part of the system, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think that the statistic for burnout in physical therapy, at least at the company that I was at, saw that like a huge percentage of the clinicians within the first 3 years of starting their career would leave the company just because of
Wow.
that burnout. And so, like, I was definitely feeling a lot of that, like, kind of all through my sort of through like college and grad school and stuff. I was obsessed with physical therapy. I was obsessed with learning about this stuff. It was the first time I actually cared about learning stuff, as we talked about before with high
Wow.
school.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like any chance that I could find, I was just like trying to learn. I was watching videos online. I was just like applying stuff on my own. I was writing workout programs for my friends. I got my strength and conditioning coach certification during my senior year of college, on top of my other coursework, just because I wanted to learn more. Um, and I was super excited to enter the field and just get out there and start doing this. And then when I got out, very quickly that burnout really set in, and it was really heartbreaking for me of feeling this for the past 7 years. I had been obsessed with learning about this thing and dreaming about this moment, and then to kind of have the system chew me up and spit me out a little bit
Yeah.
was really hard. And
So when you
so
started ISO
mhm,
Health, what was the thing that day one you wanted to do differently? Like, what was your kind of focus? You loved physical therapy. You didn't like how it
mhm,
was being administered in terms of how the business model worked. What did
mhm,
you want to bring to, ISO Health day one?
totally. Like I wanted to be able to say, so ISO Health stands for In Search of Health. And when we moved out here, I knew that I was looking for something different in the way that I could treat patients, being one on one with them and just like truly making sure that they felt supported by me, but also like looking for what worked best for me too. Just because then I felt like I could really dive into cases and spend time on this stuff so that way patients could get the best results possible. And like that looked like leaving the traditional healthcare setting and going out on my own. If you had asked me, would you start your own business in grad school? I'd say absolutely not. Like I had no interest in that, and then it truly it was that drive for like wanting to love the profession again that really drove me into this for sure.
Isn't it interesting? Your focus on outcomes versus business model,
Hmm.
drove your current practice to, the success you've had so far. Because when you're at 5 patients, all moving them along, to your point, you want them all to be successful. You want them all to be healed, but you just can't put the kind of energy and time
No way.
and focus on those individuals. So their outcomes are going to differ, greatly based upon them versus your input, which is really interesting in a field like yours.
Totally. Totally, totally. Like my brother right now is currently in an MBA program, and he jokes, he's like, as a business owner, what are your KPIs? Like your key performance indicators. And I'm like, how many times on during the eval people say, wow, that's crazy how much better that feels. Like that is what I care about the most, is just like seeing people like do something that they couldn't before, or feel like no pain during a motion that they had felt before, and like almost seeing that click for them. That is above and beyond like what I care about.
So when you moved out here and started your own practice, again, never had a mindset of being an entrepreneur probably prior. Were you afraid? Was the fear of kind of going out on your own and not have clients and revenue and all the other kind of stuff? What was that like and how did you overcome that?
Totally. I mean, like we moved out here. We had a couple friends and stuff out here, but it was truly starting over from day one. Like I had no support system besides my fiance and a couple friends here, and it was very much putting myself out there. And I joke that through this whole process over the past year, I've been wrong about everything. Like I during grad school and stuff, we'd have networking events and we'd learn about marketing. I'm like, I don't need to know about this stuff. I'm just gonna be a good clinician. Like I'm good. You were wrong. And so it's definitely been learning those skills that I did not pay attention to before, and learning a new set of skills. I consider myself a really, really good clinician, and it's been fun to learn a new set of like challenges and stuff like that, just because it's like if you're not growing, you're dying. And
Yeah.
like I think it's really cool to see the stuff, see what the norm is in terms of as a small business owner, you get targeted by all sorts of like marketing agencies and like this is the way you're supposed to do this. And I feel like I've kind of seen that stuff and said, some of this feels pretty salesy and pretty disgenuine. And I feel like I've gone about it in a more like personal way. And I feel like that has created like better relationships, and just it's felt better for me. And I think it's felt better for the client as well.
Well, I love that transition into the next question. I was going to ask you, one of the things that I really loved about hearing your story was focus on authenticity, focus on being yourself, which in theory, that's all we should be, but it usually doesn't, happen in many professions. So what does that look like in your practice? Growing your business by just being yourself and being truly authentic to who you are and what you want to put out there. How does that show up within your physical therapy practice?
Totally. Totally. Like I mean, like first things first is like on day one, it's like I don't have like an AI bot that texts people. Like when people they schedule an appointment with me online, like I text them saying, "Hey, like this is what to expect. If you need anything or have a hard time finding like the office, shoot me a text, or if you have any questions." Um, and especially like a lot of it is through this whole process. I like a big way that I kind of grew my presence in the community was I started a mobility class just at a local park that was totally free or donation based. And I always joked that it was that all donations go towards my wedding. Like my fiance would come every week, and it was just like a nice way for people and their friends to like come meet me and come meet my fiance, like see what I'm all about. I joke that I can be a lot, like I have a lot of energy, and I am who I am. And so it's like if people like that, then fantastic. I would love to work with you and support you. But it's like if people don't want that and they want a little bit more like, hey, this is the transactional physical therapy, then there are those clinicians out there, and that's totally fine. And so like it's getting to know me, it's getting to know like my family, getting to just talk about like life in general, as well as even simple things like today my first patient was at 9 o'clock. I walk across the street to the coffee shop, and I texted her ahead of time, be like, "Hey, perks of being my first patient. You want anything from the shop across the street?"
Right. Just engaging at a deep level and creating those real long-term connections. So you talked about that free mobility class that you created in the park. How did that become pivotal in the growth and really understanding how you connect with the community within ISO Health?
Hmm. I think that part of it is so I talked a lot about like my mentors that I had back home, and one of the clinicians, she owned a gym with her husband, and every Sunday she ran this class, like a similar class at her gym, and she would always let me come for free. And like I was playing high level ultimate frisbee at the time. I was always hurting, and so I was like, this is the best thing for my body. And so she never charged me, and so I wanted to be able to just give people something
It's
that they
cool.
could kind of come to. And while the donations were cool, and I think I cared about that a little bit more in the beginning, it very quickly turned into the really nice thing that I would hear was like, "Hey, like I really, really appreciate this. This is a great part of my Monday. Like I really needed this after today." And or just like seeing little communities form and people saying, "Oh, like hey, it's great to see you," to other random people who would come, and just creating that little like sense of community. Like Denver's a very transient town in terms
Yeah.
of people come and go, and usually people are transplants. And so for people to be able to meet others at that like felt really, really cool. And I think that like the biggest lesson that I learned in terms of growth and everything like that is just consistency. And I'm sure you've heard this with a lot of entrepreneurs is like it's going to take time for this stuff to grow. And the first couple classes, we had maybe like 5 people who I think were just friends who felt bad and like didn't want me to just
Like,
be there by
we don't
myself.
want Logan to be all by himself in the
Yeah,
park. That's
e-
hilarious, yeah.
exactly. But then it very quickly turned into like, I think for the past couple weeks that we've done it, we've had like a consistent like 30 to 35 people
It's
for the
amazing.
last 2 months, which is really cool. And it's not a fancy setup. I used to ride my bike to the park with my camping table on my back and a big banner that I would duct tape to the table, and I'd have my speaker and a couple extra mats and stuff. And it was just a nice way to get outside and move myself and be able to show people what I do with people as well.
It's amazing. So we've talked about some of the things that have gone well, some of the way you've kind of built up your early success in your business. Let's talk about some of the challenges you had. You know, you
Mhm.
came out here, didn't know anybody. Just love to learn more about some of the things you had to overcome early in the growth of your practice.
I think a lot of it was that consistency, like piece, and especially not seeing the return right away. Um, like I didn't have social media before I started my business, and obviously in today's world, you have to be on social media. Um, and I think just the practice of being consistent and like doing things and then not feeling really, really like discouraged when you don't see like that person's schedule right away, or maybe you have a lead and it falls off or something like that. And I think that that was a big struggle for me. Through my previous job, I was in an insurance-based clinic where there was always new patients coming in the door, and I had never really truly felt um, really imposter syndrome until setting out on this journey because I felt really confident in my clinical skills. I had a great team of support back home where it's like I could ask these people questions. I could always lean on people for support. And I think being like out here without that support for the first time, like overcoming that imposter syndrome was definitely like a big aspect of it because it's like I went to school to heal people, not to grow businesses, and
Yeah.
it's definitely been a fake it till you make it like journey along the
Yeah.
way a little bit.
I mean, almost every small business has the same challenge, right?
Mhm,
Most businesses, specifically in the kind of service-based stuff, they started their business often similar with a passion,
mhm.
marketing, bringing in customers, billing, all this other stuff, which was like, I don't want to deal with this, but when you go on your own, you actually have to deal with this. And so when you think about, growing your business, and I know the ISO clinic the free mobile was big. How did you learn business? How did you learn marketing? How did you learn how to bring new customers, new patients into your practice?
To be honest, I don't think I did. So I saw my first patient in January, and at the time I was working at another job, and so I was growing this on the side, kind of part time, and so it was definitely burning the candle at both ends a little bit. But honestly, growing the business and trying to like do outreach and stuff like that, it was energizing to me. It didn't feel like work, which was really cool, and that's how I kind of knew that I was doing the right thing. Um, and it's grown to the point where in September I truly stepped out on my own and I opened up a clinic with 2 other providers just right in like my old neighborhood essentially where I used to live, and it's an area that I love and feels like home. And it's kind of cool where I like look at my schedule now and it's completely full.
It's amazing.
And I joke that I've sent 3 marketing emails over the course of the last 9 months, and the last one said, "Hi, test first name," and I sent that to 500 people. And the
Oh
follow up
my
to that
god.
was clearly I am better at treating patients than marketing. And so like a lot of the growth has come from truly just word of mouth. Like I think that when I zoomed out in terms of how could I truly grow this that felt authentic. It was just give people the best experience possible and get them really good results. And it's like you build it and they will come. And I really feel like that's what's happened, which has been amazing.
So that is amazing. That's really awesome. So in your kind of early stage of your growth, was there something that at first you resisted, a decision that you resisted doing that you finally said, okay, I'm going to do this, whatever that was, that turned out to be a really positive move for you?
I think that part of it was like the first thing that comes to mind would be when I first like on the East Coast, I feel like business is very different than it is out here. I feel like coming here, I almost had to get out of the competition mindset and more of like a collaboration mindset. And one of the big people in my world right now is um like a colleague of mine, Amelia, who I actually rent out the space with her in our new clinic. And I remember seeing her post on like the local Facebook groups and stuff like that about her new pelvic floor cash based PT business. Just thinking to myself, like, man, like she's competition, like she's doing so well. And I was like very envious of like her and like what she was doing. And I remember just like watching along from the sidelines thinking like, oh, like this is my competition. And then it finally got to the point where I was like, you know what, swallow your pride, go meet this person. So I just asked her if she wanted to grab coffee, and she's been my one of my biggest supporters through this whole
It's
process
amazing.
now. And she was more than willing to just like help me and give me advice and whatnot, and just like be a sounding board for me over the past 9 months. And then when she was planning on moving out of the space that she was in and into the current space that we are in, she was like, "Hey, you were the first person I thought of if you're interested in moving into the space with me." And so, and that's really been the pivotal, like, turning point of my business for sure.
That's amazing. So you almost recreated your little mentor group out here with, by reaching out of your comfort zone. That's really awesome. Most people, to your
Totally.
point, wouldn't do that. They would look at that and say, "Well, I don't wanna get too close with her. She's kicking my ass right now. She's bringing all these customers in," and yet we all have opportunities to learn from other people, and to your point, there's enough for everybody if you're doing a great job. That's really awesome. I love that. So, one of the things you had said in kind of, as we were discussing, you don't have a vision of hiring other practitioners underneath you. You
Mm.
really wanna grow your practice. Tell me more about that. Why do you wanna do that? And how do you scale your practice if it's just you?
That's a really good question. So a big thing for me was when I left Connecticut and I came here, I worked in another job that was kind of a similar out of network practice, but I was working as an employee, and I kind of saw I was seeing what they were charging and what they were making, and then what I was making, and seeing like, well, like it doesn't feel almost fair, I guess. And so, like a big thing for me is I think like as I've reflected over the past couple years of my career, has been seeing that like we as physical therapists graduate from school with so much debt, and we enter a field where the debt to income ratio is so poor, and like insurance cuts keep happening and whatnot. And a big thing for me is being able to like obviously physical therapy is an investment for people, and I want to keep that as obtainable as possible for them. And so for me to be able to pay a clinician what I think that they deserve in terms of the cost of living these days and like what student loans are, like the average PT comes out with $140,000 worth of loans,
Wow.
and the average starting salary in Colorado for an insurance based clinic is $65,000, and it's like
Wow.
those two numbers just
It
aren't
doesn't
there.
add up. No, it's,
No. And
interesting.
so and so like a big thing for me would be like I don't really have interest in gaining money off of someone else who's worked really hard to get to where they are. It's like I'd rather help people get to like do what I've done essentially. And it's been cool where meeting people in the community and other like younger therapists even than me who are looking at the current environment saying, well, this doesn't look good. Like I'm really worried. And then them asking me like, hey, how did you do this? It feels cool to be able to step into the shoes of Amelia back in January when she met with me and say like, hey, like I'd love to help you essentially. And people being overly thankful for me saying like, thank you so much for giving me this advice and stuff. I'm like, dude, I wouldn't have gotten here if someone else didn't do that for me. And so
Yeah.
like, I think that in terms of scaling and whatnot, the biggest thing that's missing from my life right now is being able to mentor. And so I think that if I were to continue to scale and grow, like it'd be more so just helping other physical therapists do what I've done essentially and say like, hey, I'm not perfect in terms of from a business standpoint, but it's like I've been able to grow like my own practice where I'm able to live the life that I want to live and have a great work life balance and be able to treat the people that I want to treat. And like, life is really great right now. And so I'd love to help other people get to there as well.
I love that. And so when you think about the vision for where you want to take ISO Health, you touched upon a little bit of that mentorship, growing it through the community. What does that look like if 5 years from now, what does ISO Health look like?
Like I think that there's always a part of me that wants to treat like where I love being able to really have an impact on people and make sure that they feel really, really supported and that they feel like they have a PT in their back pocket, but then it's also mentoring other clinicians. Like one of the like one of my favorite moments from my last job was being able to write like one of the aides who worked there. I wrote her letter of recommendation and I really mentored her and that was like really, really, really rewarding to me. And I think like just being able to help people in like any way I can in terms of like the current healthcare system, whether it's from the patient side or the clinician side. I think that that's like what I want to help people with is escaping that system essentially, where it's like people are in search of more out of life and they're in search of like better health. They're in search of just like a better life in general. And so whether
Yeah.
that's helping clinicians escape from the current hamster wheel of what we're doing and helping them like step into where the field is going, but as well as like just helping patients as well. And I think like another layer on top of that, if I can continue rambling, is like seeing where I am now and seeing like okay, like how can I take this practice and like make a real impact on the world besides just treating.
That's really beautiful. It's amazing because so few are thinking about, especially when you're starting off. Most people just trying to get there. They're like, okay, how do you go to the next level? And as you're focused on both helping other clinicians break free, you also have a huge focus on helping patients get the care that they probably aren't getting from other other means of physical therapy, specifically in the insurance-based world. How do you make sure every patient feels seen, heard, cared for, which ultimately becomes, your calling card in your practice?
hmm I mean like the way I finish every evaluation is, do you have any questions for me? Or like, what questions do you have for me? Because like, it is my biggest pet peeve when people leave medical appointments not understanding what's going on, because that means that the provider did not do a good job. But like I treat people who are wildly successful in terms of their field. And so it's a big thought process of mine. Like people are not dumb. If you explain to them and have them as an active participant in their own rehab, then you're going to get so much better buy-in in terms of what they're doing on their own, and they're going to get better results. Like I'm straight up with people where I see people about once a week or so versus a traditional clinic you'd usually be seen 3 times a week. But I tell people like, hey, as long as you're doing this stuff and understand why you're doing it, you don't need me breathing down your neck to do this. I want you to understand why we're doing this, not that it's just a list that you were handed. And you're like, why the heck am I doing this? Like, who is this dude? It's like, I want you to understand the ins and outs of this so that way you can understand the concepts behind what we're doing, just that way like you can take that into day-to-day life and then like the goal is to say goodbye. Like the goal is to not hold you on like hold on
Right.
to you forever. I think I checked the other day and my like the average number of visits that I see people for is about 4.1, and that's dragged up by some people that I see pretty frequently because they want to be seen more. But
Yeah.
like the goal is to say like, okay, this is what we have going on. These are the tools that are going to get us there. And then like I can see people pretty infrequently. And then usually people end up feeling pretty better pretty quickly because they're doing the things that they need to do outside of when they see me. And so it's like, I'm not Jesus. I'm not healing you. I'm showing you how to get there.
I love that. And you probably had the same kind of challenge when you were thinking of going on your own. It's scary, right? I mean,
Mm,
you may not love the work, you may feel burnt out, but you're showing up and someone's paying you, and you go home, you come up the next day and you're showing up and someone's paying you. So what do you tell those clinicians that know they want to do something different, but they're afraid? They're afraid to take that next step. You know, what kind of confidence can you give them to go on their own and do what they feel is right for them?
I think that I think it comes back to like why they're doing it. Like I definitely know a lot of people who they went through school and this is a job to them. Like a big part of my practice is like my business and my brand is me. That's another reason why I wouldn't really feel super comfortable hiring is just because like people want to work with me. Like it's my experience that I give them and whatnot. And maybe that's a little bit of me not being able to give up control. But it's like they need to truly care about trying to help the person because then if that's the case, then if they have a challenging case or they might not know what's going on, then they're going to seek that knowledge and whatnot to be able to truly help that person versus say like, well, I'll just clock back in tomorrow and try again. And
Yeah.
that's I think like what causes that burnout and just like not wanting to show up is just like not having like their own personal investment into that.
That's awesome, and that is kind of leads into kind of the way I always love to end this is, 3 pieces of advice that you would give to an aspiring entrepreneur, whether that is in the physical therapy, world or other entrepreneurial pursuits, where someone's going to take that leap and into the unknown. You've done it, you're doing it successfully, you've built a practice in a very short period of time. Well, what 3 pieces of advice would you give them?
I think like one of the best pieces of advice that I got was like whatever you want out of your environment or your world, like you need to put out. So like when I was starting, like I was on my own. I've always been a team person. And so to be out on my own, like I really needed support. And so I poured support into every business that I could in terms of just like reposting your stuff on social media, trying to like do events with them, highlighting them as much as I could. That has, it was again one of those delayed gratification things where over time, like that support came back and it felt really, really good. Um, And so like putting out like what you need from like the world would definitely be one of them. The second is like definitely like you got to know your why in terms of why you're doing this. If it's to make a bunch of money, then there's always the search for more, right? Like in terms of scaling, in terms of everything else like that, and you need to be able to find intrinsic value in what you're doing versus if you're just chasing the extrinsic like money aspect of things, then it is really easy to just dive into the deep rabbit hole and never see the light of day again.
Totally, totally.
And it also makes like the slower times a lot harder for sure. And so like having a clear understanding of your why as to like why you're doing it. And then I think the last one would just be like keeping yourself like that's been the biggest thing. A close friend of mine, Ricky back home, I remember when I first had this idea, he had said to me, he's like, dude, look, just be yourself and people will love you. And I think that
That's good advice.
I don't think that I'm a perfect person at all. Like I think that I make mistakes all the time. I think that I can be a lot for sure, but I think that we live in a world that is very disgenuine, especially with social media and everything that you see with marketing materials and things like that. And that has been something that I've prided myself in of like showing my frustration with the current like system in terms of the sorts of things you see online. And I think that people resonate with just authenticity way more than you expect.
I love that. I should end there, but I wanted to ask one more question because you
Yeah,
brought it
do
up
it.
and one of your advice was, you talked about your why, of someone understanding their why. I'd love to end on understanding your why. What drives you on a daily basis? I think we got a good picture of it throughout this, but how would you define it in real succinct terms?
But like one of the key mottos of like where I started my career was like be the reason and change the game. And it was like all about making someone's day like 1% better. And it's like in rehab, you're always gonna have like good days and you're gonna have bad days too. And it's an uncomfortable experience, but it's like if you can make someone's day just 1% better by making them feel supported, feel heard, giving them an understanding as to like what's going on and just giving them clarity, like that's the whole point. It's just like being able to just like step out and make the world a little bit of a better place in terms of just giving people a better relationship with their bodies and with what they're dealing with.
Well, thank you for that. And by the way, thank you on your birthday for taking the time. And congrats on all your success. Congrats on making that leap, which myself and everyone else who's been an entrepreneur sometime in their career has done and said, I'm going to make this happen. And it's amazing meeting someone so kind of earlier in that journey with so much kind of, vision, focus, understanding of why you're doing what you're doing. because that's only going to lead to even more success going forward. So, Logan, thanks again for joining today.
I really appreciate it, Eric. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me on this episode. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to Business Underdog on your favorite podcast platform. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode and you'll be the first to hear these incredible stories. Please be sure to follow us on social and visit our website at businessunderdog.com for episode updates, resources, and more. And thank you for listening today. Until next time, stay inspired, keep pushing forward, and embrace your inner underdog.